that than not. And if he is, Texas is going to be hard to beat. So, we're going to get a taste of that very early on.
All right. What do you think of that game? What are you leaning towards? What's your inclination? Dillon, stop it.
What?
Go ahead.
I mean, in anticipation of, college football season and not being able to wait for it, when lines were released, I may or not have already put some money on Texas to win that game at the spread that it opened up at. So
I can see it in your face.
I'm a believer that this team's going to win the national championship.
The rivalries, it's up there on top of the list, man. And if we allow them to devalue it, we lose a lot of what makes college football special. Don't let them do it. Don't let them devalue what it means to you.
Back at it again with a custom thing on the bottom. I don't know what we call that thing, Dillon, whatever that graphic is, but
banner?
It's ours, my man. We got our own.
Got my own name on the banner. Mama, we made it.
Juck and Dillon on Bucks. We got Dillon's Twitter handle right here. Again, guys, if you don't know, Dillon Davis from the Delaware Gazette joins us all football season sporadically throughout, and he and I, we wrap some Buckeyes like we like to do. Dillon was at practice today. Dillon, I guess we can start with your big takeaways from practice. Well, you know what? No, let me set this up like this. So last year, we sat here together and we discussed one injury that would absolutely devastate the Buckeyes, and that injury was Josh Simmons. And we both said, that's the one thing that this team can't afford to lose. You lose Josh Simmons, season's over. Now, we saw that happen, and the season was not over. This year, the biggest area of concern, the interior of that defensive line, and day one, Edric Houston goes down. All right, that's the setup. Now you take it away.
Certainly, I mean, anybody who, has been on Twitter or following Buckeye News today knows that was the big, take away from practice today. I'm not going to sit here and speculate on what the injury is. I know I've seen some video out there. Full disclosure, we're not supposed to video record any of these, things in real time and put that out on Twitter, which is why you don't see anybody from the beat with any kind of video on the injury. But there were fans in attendance today, and look, I'm happy for the fans who get to do that. I wish I had that opportunity growing up, but then nobody's really policing them. And there is a video out there I believe I saw on Twitter, kind of slowing down. Looks like he rolled his ankle. Obviously sprained ankles can still be a thing that lingers for a while, but in general, for what I saw when he went down, and I was watching the play, so I saw him go down. I mean, wasn't looking at his feet, so my initial thought was it was, something worse than that, and he stayed down for a good minute. They helped him up, but he put no weight on it, straight to the locker room. So certainly my mind went to the worst, my worst fears, our worst fears, but if that video is exactly, where the injury happened, it looks like maybe it's not quite as bad as maybe we thought. Sprained ankle keeps him out, but certainly that was the biggest takeaway. Ohio State, as you mentioned, cannot afford. I mean, I'm not sure if they're good enough to position with him in there fully healthy alongside K-Mac, in terms of depth. So they can't afford to lose him. So we'll find out more tomorrow. We'll be back at the Woody tomorrow. Certainly, even if he's not practicing, you hope to at least see him out there, because if he doesn't make an appearance at all, then your mind immediately starts to go to, what are they protecting him from? Or, how much more imaging and those kind of things are needing to be done today that he can't even be at practice.
Right.
So, we'll learn a little bit more tomorrow for sure. But, for now, not great. But I think they avoided, if I'm just speaking, my own personal opinions, I think they avoided anything disastrous in the sense that they would keep him out long-term.
So my look at the video, I got the same kind of feeling as you. To me, it looked like he just planted and the ankle kind of pronated and then he dropped. But now that you're telling me he was down for a full minute, that kind of makes me think, I don't know, man. I hope so. But again, last year we sat here, talked about Ty Malone was a guy that you had your eye on.
Yeah.
He's definitely looking bigger. He's tuned in. He's not playing baseball anymore. This is his third year at Ohio State, a fourth-year guy with pedigree. This was a top 100 player coming out of high school, out of Bergen Catholic, Quincy Porter's high school. And now he's a grown dude. And I believe that he is the next man up at 3 Tech behind Edric. And this might give him a chance to really shine here if Edric is out any extensive time. Nonetheless, when we look at that position, you got him, Jason Moore, Jarquez Carter at 3 tech. And I don't have much faith in Jason Moore here. It's time alone for me, or Jarquez Carter is going to pop up.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree. Make no mistake about it. Even if, Ohio State avoided the worst case scenario, or, one of the worst case scenarios with Edric, I can't imagine him being back, practicing at any real, speed anytime soon.
Right.
And again, sprained ankles, if that's what it is, if he rolled an ankle and things like that, those things can linger as well. So they have to be careful in that sense. So make no mistake about it. It's an opportunity for guys to step up now that are going to be thrust into, more spots in it with more reps, and especially as pads get on and practice starts to become more physical, more meaningful reps as well. So, I agree with you about time alone. Like, he was my guy last year, guys with opportunities, mixed results. It's now or never now. There's no time to wait on either. He is or he isn't a player that can play at this level and help Ohio State get to where they want to go. I still believe that he can be a serviceable piece behind Edric, but is serviceable enough. We've talked about this in the past before. My concerns with the Ohio State defensive line isn't whether they can get to a spot of being good. It's whether they can get to a spot of being good enough. And again, I mean that in terms of depth, I know that, assuming they're healthy, K-Mac and Edric Houston, that's a really good tandem in the middle. But depth-wise and what it's going to take to traverse an entire season, can they get to a spot where they're just good enough depth-wise to survive that? Can Ty be one of those guys? I think so. But, I'm not going to sit here and declare that, I have the utmost faith in him. And, again, you mentioned Jason Moore. I don't know what to expect of Jason Moore anymore. It's one of those things where if it hasn't clicked for him now, why would anybody really expect that it's going to all of a sudden? But then again, we've seen some guys, be late bloomers. So, we'll find out. If Ty's not that guy, that I don't know what else to expect from the rest of that group.
The thing about Edric Houston is, while we all do think that he is going to be that caliber of guy, he still needs this practice. Yeah. This is a big missed opportunity here. He's got to get reps too. Even though he does have that potential, he's not been playing the position long, and less than a year now. This would be his first camp at that role, and he's just not had a ton of reps at it. So, a big one here, a big one. I can't wait to get this news tomorrow. I did want to ask you. So Big Ten, go ahead.
Add real quick. It's a very fair point about, him not playing the position very long. And even though he has some quote unquote experience there, it's something he's new at. But there's also that element for the entire defense. I know that they've said throughout the winter and off season and even into, fall camp now that it's still the Buckeye defense, but like Matt Patricia is going to have his own spin on this defense, like, whatever that may look like. So there are things that, just defensively they're going to want to do that, even for guys who are a little bit deeper with experience, there are still things that they need to get reps with, as the bullets start to fly and pads come on and things are truly live in camp this year that the guys need to get reps on. So without a doubt, I mean, it's still, even if it's something that's not going to keep him out long term, it's going to cost him reps. It definitely, it's impactful for sure.
That's a great point. And one of my first thoughts was, maybe this means some more 3-4 actually, if we see that. But our man K-Mac, I saw a picture of him yesterday. Tell me if you saw this in person today. He looks slimmer, but bigger, thicker in the arms. Looks like the body comp is coming around real well. Like he's ready to play heavy snaps in a game. Yeah,
I mean, there's no way of telling just by looking at him, but like if I had to make my bets by just looking at him, he looks like a guy who's definitely going to be able to shoulder a more of a load this year in terms of snap counts, whatever that number looks like. Again, he's going to have to. So, get ready for it. But he looks like he's in a better position without question to be that guy. That remains to be seen. And certainly, it's one thing to even just now in camp without pads on and when it's not quite as physical to do that now, but it's not just the endurance part of it, but, playing a position like that where you're in the trenches playing and play out, how you withstand that as well. So, but there's certainly, he looks encouraging from that standpoint, but still a lot to be determined there.
As questionable as it is at 3 tech with that depth, I feel at least, we've at least seen time alone. We've watched him against Marshall have a pretty big game. When we look at 1 tech behind K-Mac, we've got Will Smith Jr., who we've not seen anything out of. Behind him, Eric Mensah, who, was slated to be a kind of 3-4 year project. He's just in year 2. And then freshman Max Roy, which means it's got to be Will Smith.
Yeah.
And we heard some encouraging things at Big Ten Media Days yesterday about Will Smith, last week, about Will Smith, which is great. We've seen people run with some articles with that and a lot of talk about Will Smith this last week. I want to believe what they said was true, but it also could be like, it's got to be Will, so we're going to pump you up publicly, Will, and let you know you're the guy. Did you see anything encouraging out of Will Smith today, or not?
I get a lot of people asking me about Will Smith and, whether that's, legit to some of the things that are being said about him. I don't have a lot of comments about Will Smith because I haven't seen much of him. Nobody has. And certainly one day into camp, I can't say I took away anything about Will Smith. I think there's definitely some, legitimacy to what you said about he has to be that guy. So, let's let him know publicly that's what we're expecting of him. Admittedly, I think there's probably a little bit of I don't want to say a name bias, but obviously it'd be a great story, given, who he is as well. Not to say that he hasn't earned anything if he gets on the field, but I think just by default, he has to be that guy behind K-Mac. So, whether it's good enough, once again, it always goes back to what we talk about or what I've always said, that I don't know if it's going to be good enough or not. I fully expect Will Smith to be on the field, a decent amount and be that guy, and then give him every opportunity to be that guy, and then go from there to see whether it's good enough or not. But to sit here and speak definitively that I think it will be good enough or that he's a very serviceable, rotational piece along that defensive line, I can't say that for certain yet. I doubt I'll be able to say that at by the time, game weeks here, and we're talking about the Texas game, to be able to say hey, yeah, no, Will Smith's going to be fine. So, and part of that's because I don't see nearly as much as obviously the coaching staff does. So, but regardless, no matter what I think or don't think, or what they think or don't think, well, you're going to have to play Will Smith. So, get ready to go play, and we'll see if it's good enough over time. So
2 transfers on the edge and a linebacker moves down. So you got 3 new guys. Kenyatta and Caden Curry were thought to kind of be the number 1 and number 2 before Bo Atkinson comes in from North Carolina. At this point, my impression is heading into camp here, I think that this is more going to be kind of the 3 of them that are getting the most snaps. That's my impression of how this is going to play out. Obviously, a lot to be seen, but did you see anything that you noticed out of those defensive ends today? Bo Atkinson, is he about Kenyatta's size? That's what he looks like in the photos.
Well, first of all, let's start off by saying Kenyatta Jackson, holy cow, man. This guy is so impressive looking. I've been a big Kenyatta guy since he got to Ohio State. I thought this was, a matter of time. He had to kind of wait his turn behind some guys, for obvious reasons. But you talk about looking the part. Kenyatta looks fantastic, strong, quick. One of the good things about camp, the way it's kind of set up, is we get a good look at the defensive line, a lot of their individual positional drills and things like that, because it's right there next to where we're kind of allowed to stand. So I watch a lot of the defensive line, and it was hard not to come away today just thinking about Kenyatta Jackson as, I don't want to say a premier edge rusher in the country, but he's going to make a name for himself. He'll be a household name by the end of the year in college football. I firmly believe that. So there's Kenyatta Jackson, and then there's the rest of them, and we'll kind of find out. Obviously, Caden Curry is going to be one of those guys. But without question, I think Bo Atkinson is your 3rd guy. I think those 3 are, clearly what you're going for with part of. I don't know what to expect from CJ Hicks. It's one of those things where we've speculated time and time again about what CJ might do or what he could do or what he's poised to do, and it doesn't really pan out. So we'll see what happens there. But those 3 guys, without a doubt, are going to be your 3 primary edge rushers, I think. And I think you have a really good one at the top of that with Kenyatta. And then we'll see what Caden Curry, if he can take another step forward, and then what Bo can become. But in terms of size for Bo, he's similar to Bo or to Kenyatta in terms of just height and build. Neither one of them are necessarily, big in their lower half, but they both have. It seems like they both have similar motors and speed in that sense. So, and neither one of them are, they're not Chase Youngs out there in terms of just being absolutely ripped, but still, plenty strong enough to handle, premier tackles in college football. But yeah, they're similar in build. But again, I got to preface all this by saying, it was one practice. They didn't do a ton. That we got to see that was, truly live. It wasn't good on goods either. Most of it was all split. So I know it sounds like what Ryan Day tells us a lot, that, it's hard to evaluate much right now. And we'll see as practice goes on, and pads come on, but it's true. It's true. There's only so much you can glean from what we saw, but that's why I kind of focus on body compositions and things like that, and just some of the raw skill sets that you can see in positional drills.
Well, speaking of body composition, I mean, these Buckeyes, because of the questionable defensive line at this point, are clearly kind of sticking out like a sore thumb when we look at all the other positional groups on the team. The linebackers going to need to be great this year.
Yeah.
The secondary going to need to be great this year. And the great news is it can be, because they've got the players on both levels. When we look at linebacker, obviously we know who the top two are in Sonny and Arvell. Peyton Pierce seems the clear number 3. I was wondering who's going to be that number 4 guy. And it sounded like today they had Sonny paired with Peyton, and then Arvell Reese paired with Riley Pettijohn, who's now up to 230 pounds. And that's impressive in itself, because he was not 230 when he got here.
No.
But yeah, man, if he's that 4-man, like, that is a squad. That is an absolute squad.
When we talked about the recruiting class this past year, and I know like guys like Devin Sanchez got a lot of buzz for obvious reasons, and in spring practice as well, Devin Sanchez got a lot of buzz. But I think, I've stated before on your show that, I was probably most excited about Riley Pettijohn in that class. He quickly became one of my favorites in that class. Liked what I saw from him in limited opportunities in the spring as well. And then, what he's done with his frame coming into the summer. We've heard so much about these guys and how well they've done in summer workouts, not just summer, winter. There you go. Winter on to the summer with their workouts and getting their bodies ready. And, what's not to like about that? So, and the funny thing is we're talking about a position where Arvell might be like the Adonis of the defense in terms of his body composition. Sonny's equally impressive, or close to it anyways, in terms of his body composition at that size. And then now we're talking about Riley Pettijohn, a true freshman. So really impressive stuff. Like you said, they're going to have to be great. Unfortunately, a lackluster defensive line can impact your ability to be great at linebacker. So there's, it's not just as simple as making up for, a lackluster defensive line, but I digress there. But yeah, Riley Pettijohn, has a chance to carve out an early role on the 2 deep, and with injuries, and you never know, maybe he finds his way onto the field very, very early. And he looks, at least physically, like he's ready to do that.
It certainly wouldn't surprise any of us. The secondary got 2 of the bigger position battles kind of going on the team, with Jalen McClain and Malik Hartford, which we've talked about in the offseason here. And now it sounds like Lorenzo Styles is getting pushed by Bryce West for that nickel role.
Yeah.
Any takeaways from watching that secondary, and Devin Sanchez as well?
I not a ton, just in the sense, because again, it was split up. So you didn't even have your secondary together a whole lot, so it was kind of all over the place. And also, they're on 2 opposite ends of the field. So, I find myself on one end or the other, trying to look down to the other side and catch a little bit of that, but mainly watching what's in front of me. So I didn't, in terms of a guy like Bryce West, I didn't see a ton of him. My biggest takeaway today from like guys in the secondary was, and I know some people will say that I'm like maybe the leader of his fan club, but Aaron Scott continues to impress the heck out of me. I saw a couple of one-on-one battles that he had, one with Jeremiah Smith, where he just defended in a quick out route beautifully, got his hand over the top, and it was probably more of a drop than it was than a PBU, but his ability to get his hand in there certainly affected Jeremiah's ability to make the play, and it was just impressive. And Aaron Scott was fired up after the fact, let Jeremiah know about it, and I don't know what his role could be. I don't know where that comes in at, but if Aaron Scott had to start tomorrow and they were playing Texas, I'd feel good about it. So that was a big takeaway for me. And we're talking about a guy who might not hardly see the field, because I think we all agree that, J&J and IGB are pretty much, slotted in there to start a corner. And I don't think Aaron's really a candidate to be that slot guy. So So that was my biggest takeaway from the secondary. Admittedly, again, I didn't see, all those guys. I overheard somebody talking today about the idea of Caleb Downs playing the nickel. And it was really interesting to me if you think about the player and what they ask of that position. And I haven't seen it yet on the practice field, so I don't know if it's something they've ever actually done or showed at all. But so I'm not saying there's any validity to it, but it got me thinking about the player. And I'm still a big fan of Malik Hartford, and I know everybody's a big fan of Jalen McClain. So to put those two guys on the field together and have Caleb do that, it's an interesting thought. Again, I'm not saying by any way that Ohio State's doing that or thinking about doing that or they've showed it at all. I'm not saying that, but I heard somebody talking about it. Somebody that is on the beat like me, and somebody that I think has a fairly good football acumen and is keyed in and things like that, to just mention the idea in passing. And I thought about it for 10 minutes standing there. I was watching practice, but really in my head I was thinking about Caleb Downs in this nickel role and what that would look like and how that would benefit Ohio State defensively, and kind of like it. So
I gotta say, it sounds pretty damn interesting to me. I mean, even if Caleb was, let's say he wasn't on the team, out of the equation, if we're just looking at that duo at safety of Malik and McClain, I'm comfortable with that. Like, it's not something that's like I'm worried about. Like that's a pretty sweet duo right there. We've certainly had not that good of duos in the past at times.
Sure. And I know, like, I'm not dogging Lorenzo Styles at all. So, but if you told me out of those three spots, your two safety spots and the nickel spot, you had to get your three best combination of tacklers and coverage guys on the field, who would those three guys be? And I think Lorenzo would be outside the top three of those, four guys for me as well. And we know, having watched Jordan Hancock do it so well last year, that such a big part of playing that nickel is being able to tackle and playing in run support. And there's nobody better on the team to do that, certainly in that secondary, than Caleb Downs. So, and we know that he's plenty athletic enough to run with guys. So it's interesting thought for sure. Again, I don't know if that's something that is actually being considered. I haven't seen it on the field yet, really. So, we'll see. I'll obviously, keep you guys updated if I see anything like that. But just a thought that that made me go,
On the offensive side of the ball, sounds like they lined up the ones the way we were thinking, with Ethan, Luke, Carson Hinsman, Tegra, and Austin Searveld still at that right tackle.
Yeah.
It sounds like maybe Ian Moore is that number 6 man. Is that the impression you're getting?
I mean, I can't say I've got an impression from it, because once again, there was no ones and twos. I mean, that multiple times, but I was really paying attention to the offensive line. The starting tackles, or what you would think of the starting tackles, were on one field, and the starting guards and center were on the other field with that offense. So,
oh man, come on.
To say that, I have any impression of it, I don't know that, because, there was never an instance where there was ones and twos, quote unquote. So if I had to guess, if I had to bet, I would say that's probably a pretty safe bet. But I'm not going to sit here and say that I have any real good indication of that. The only good indication I have is that your starting offensive line is going to be Austin Searveld at right tackle and Ethan Onianwa at left tackle. I think the offensive line is all but set unless injuries happen. I think that's absolutely your offensive line. The only caveat there is that if they feel that Tegra is just not getting it done, and they feel that Ian Moore could play, or if they're better served to have Austin play right guard and have Ian Moore start at right tackle, then maybe that happens. But I feel very confident that the starting offensive line is set, in my opinion, anyways.
That was something that we were discussing earlier this week, the possibility of, Tegra, if he's not, if Tegra's not 5, then he's 6. Ian Moore is 6, then he becomes 5.
Yeah.
Then you swing Austin back down to right guard and put Ian in at right tackle. Honestly, to me, that sounds like a really good idea. I don't know. We haven't seen Tegra in a while,
True.
These guys make progress, and sometimes I forget that. Like, he can be better. He's got the physical tools to be better. It's not like he's terrible.
when I say that I feel like the offensive line said, I'm giving obviously a lot of benefit to the doubt that Tegra is going to be better than he was last year. Like, surely that guy didn't just report to camp this year the same exact player, or worse for that matter, than he was last year. And if he's any better, I still think he's one of your 5 best offensive linemen, especially if you can keep Austin at right tackle. But, going to the point about Austin, we've heard so much about Austin in the offseason that he had. Ryan said it again, today during the press conference. As we look back to he just looks like an offensive lineman, man. Like, it's awesome. And then Ethan, we'll get to Ethan in a second, but going back to last year and what we saw from Donovan Jackson and how just remarkable and critical it was that he was able to have the versatility that he did, with the injuries that popped up. Like Austin, I'm not saying he is Donovan Jackson, but like Austin's versatility, like he is that guy again, in the sense that, like, if you have, aside from Carson Hinsman at center, if you have any injuries, really, even if you have an injury at center, because they have options there that might involve moving other starters. And then Austin's just an immediate plug and play guy at whatever position, tackle or guard, whether he starts a tackle and, you need to move him to guard and, bring a tackle. And his versatility is just going to be so critical for Ohio State, 1 year removed from when we saw, a guy like Donovan Jackson had that ability, and it saved Ohio State's season in so many regards.
Did you see Jordan Woods out there today? Jordan Woods, the freshman cornerback that's like 6'4".
Yeah, he was lined up against. Yeah, he was lined up at one point against Miller, who is like Bodpin. Is it Bodpin?
Yeah.
He was who was 6'5" in his own right.
Yeah.
And you could almost not even see Bodpin. Like, I was kind of like down the field behind the corner a little bit, so like he's a little bit shielded anyways, but you almost couldn't see Bodpin at all. You couldn't see, and Bodpin's not very wide to begin with. He's a very slender, receiver. But it was, I didn't even realize it at first. I can't even say I knew what number he was coming into camp. And then it had my roster in my hand. I was like, what the hell is this? And so, it's crazy.
Yeah. There was a picture, a BIA picture that somebody put out. It was like generations of BIA. And there is one dude that stands out. This guy is enormous.
It's insane.
Yeah, I don't know how long he's going to stay there, but it'll be fun to watch if he does.
Just real quick, as we're still on the offensive line, I don't need to say this because anybody, again, who's on Twitter or who's been following coverage from today, Ethan Onian, man, if that guy if Tyler Bowen can't get that guy ready to be ready to play for the Texas game, when his body looks like that and he's that damn big, what a huge failure by Tyler Bowen, because that guy has first round, NFL tackle written all over him. If Tyler Bowen's any sort of developer at the position whatsoever, then Ethan Onianwa is a future, at least top 2 round NFL draft pick. So
yeah. I mean, and a guy with experience, this guy's played 2 years of college football. Now he looks better. Obviously he's a smart kid. We heard him talk. He knows what he's talking about. In Tegra, I remember an interview, some questions you were asking Tegra when you kind of had the table to yourself with Tegra one time last year. Very insightful, intelligent guy.
Yeah.
And that's why I have a lot of confidence that he's just going to continue to get better and better.
Tegra's a very shy, reserved guy, right? So, he's very well spoken, but he's shy and reserved. And a lot of times in that sense, that might be indicative of kind of how the shell that they have to come out of as a person inside the Woody as well, around their peers as well. So I would anticipate Tegra finding, more of his place and being more comfortable just in general with who he is and where he's at with another season, and certainly with all that experience as well and confidence that comes with that as well. So I'd be really surprised if Tegra Tshabola is not one of your 5 best offensive linemen, and he hasn't gotten any better than he was at that point last year. I mean, it wasn't all bad last year either. It's not like not like the guy didn't put any good film out there, didn't have any good moments. Just consistency was an issue. I'm not saying this, but I know some people thought of him as lazy. I would never speak on that myself, because I'm not in that room watching all that film and things like that. But if any of those things were concerns and things like that, those are the things that I would worry about his ability to keep the job if he was truly a lazy human being. But I've never gotten that sense from anybody that I put a lot of stock into. So if that's not the case, if it was just a matter of, repetitions and experience and getting better, improving technique and all those things, I can't imagine Tegra Tshabola not being better than he was at this point last year, which I would still say makes him one of the 5 best offensive linemen. So
Yeah, I crush the all 22 every game, and
Yeah.
and there's I key in on line play. That's what I love to watch, and there's definitely some questionable effort at times out of Tegra. There's no doubt about it. So I get where that's coming from, but to say just blanket lazy, no, I wouldn't say it.
Yeah.
But when you're 340 pounds, it's tough, man. It's a little tougher than most of us.
True.
Are used to. Anyway, I feel great about this offensive line, Dillon. I not only feel great about the offensive line this year, I feel really good about the stability of it moving forward. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to let you finish, but to this point, it's a good mini segue. Congratulations on your first ever published article. So I read that the other day. That was awesome on the offensive line and the state of it, which you're absolutely right in the article and what you were about to say now. About the state of the offensive line, both now this year, which has a chance to be one of the better units in the country. I firmly believe that. And it's in a good spot, with what's coming to the pipeline. But please go ahead.
Yeah. So I believe in Bowen. I believe in this crew. I think they're absolutely going to have these guys ready to roll. Offensive line to me is not a concern about this team, and nothing really is on the offense other than, are we going to get good quarterback play?
Sure.
And if this team gets good quarterback play, this offense is going to score a lot of points, and they're going to need to outscore us. The defensive line might be not so good, not as good as we're accustomed to. They got to outscore us.
Yeah.
And on to these quarterbacks. Obviously, this is what everyone's waiting for, Dillon. We want to hear you talk about the quarterbacks. So take it away, buddy.
Everybody does. Everybody wants to hear about the quarterbacks, and that includes ourselves. That's why, there were 3 questions, in the press conference today about a quarterback position that, nobody knows anything about or any more about today than we did walking into the Woody this morning. Look, there are people out there who were in attendance today, which again, I'm glad the fans got to be there, but people who want to, make their assessments of quarterbacks based off today, there was nothing to go off of today other than you saw some quality throws. First of all, anybody that even says that they, saw a good amount of the quarterbacks, impossible, because they were on separate sides of the field. So, unless I didn't see anybody sprinting from one end to the other, in terms of media or fans for that matter, to be able to see a good amount of those guys. The good thing was it started pouring towards the last half of practice. So they moved inside to the indoor field, which made it a lot easier to see both sides of the field and kind of watch both quarterbacks throw, but that was a very limited window. I saw good, I saw bad. I'm not going to say that I saw a ton of Julian today for whatever reason, just based off of where I was at. I ended up watching more of Lincoln than I did of any of the quarterbacks. Lincoln had some good moments, had a really nice throw to Mylan Graham at one point. That was a high level throw. He fitted over a linebacker, but underneath the safety, just a really nice throw over the middle. So there were moments there, and then there were also moments, I think he got picked off by, I can't remember who it was now. So, some good, some bad, exactly what you'd expect, even if, in Will Howard, obviously we know, in his early days, his first few days of camp, even actually not even first few days, but first week plus of camp wasn't always, pretty as and it turned out all right, I think. So some good, some bad, nothing to glean though. Anybody who tells you oh, this is what I saw, and Lincoln had a great day, or Julian had a great day, or Julian's clearly number one guy. I saw people on Twitter saying that, it looks like Julian was the first team quarterback today. In what? In what was he the first team quarterback? Somebody on Twitter, I saw this, and if you're listening, with all due respect, again, I'm glad you were there and got to see it. But somebody said Julian was taking reps with the first team center, which was Carson Hinsman, and I know exactly what Julie's talking about. And at some point, so did Tavian. Tavian took snaps with Carson Hinsman in that same kind of thing where they were just working on center quarterback exchanges and, and faking handoffs and bootlegs and things like that. So there was nothing to take away from quarterback play today. Nothing whatsoever.
This guy thought he was going to figure it out from something like that in practice number 1 with the public there.
Right.
Come on, man.
And again, there are some things that, Ryan Day might try to say that aren't that important, or might try to kind of dampen in terms of, how much we might look into them, where I'll say I don't think that's true, Ryan. I think you're just trying to, limit the reaction to these things, but I think there's more, to read into there than you want us to believe. But those drills and anything that we saw today for that matter, there's nothing to read into it. Unfortunately, I want to know as bad as anybody else does, where this is heading, and I want to have an opinion on it, and I want to be able to tell people my opinion on it and things like that. But there's no strong opinion for now, other than I'll stick with what I've always believed, that I still think Julian saying is, has to lose the job to not win it or to not start against Texas. So.
I'm obviously of the same mind as you. I mean, I'm just a real big Julian guy. And the thing is, everything Julian does is what Ryan Day likes.
Yeah.
I mean, if this was a different coach who preferred a running quarterback at times, it would be different. Ryan Day can't stand his quarterback to run. So it's like, that's what Lincoln does best. And yeah, he can throw the ball too. But
I made that comment back in February, or shortly after Chip left, that if Chip didn't leave,
yeah, you did.
Anybody counting out Lincoln Keenholz in that quarterback race is kidding themselves, because Lincoln fits exactly what Chip Kelly would like to have out of his quarterback, a lot more so than Julian. Obviously, that's all irrelevant now. It's a moot point because he's not there. And to your point, like you said, Julian just fits what Ryan Day typically wants out of a quarterback. Not to say he's going to start him over a guy who's just outplayed him in camp, but if all things are equal, I don't see a way that Julian saying it's not starting. But that's all just based on my personal, opinions and yours. And, we talk about those things, but in terms of camp today and what we saw from day one of practice, there was nothing to make any sort of evaluations from. There just wasn't.
All right. So any final takeaways from practice before I move on, Doe?
Marlon Graham's a superstar in the waiting.
Okay. Now we're getting juicy.
Yeah. When we talked last, or maybe it was a couple of times ago, maybe it was sometime in the spring, I mentioned that I'd be shocked if Marlon Graham's not one of your maybe even top 3 guys, very quickly in the year, because I think I think it might have been after the spring game when everybody saw how good he was, but it's an opinion that I had already, even early in spring practice. Like every time I watch the guy, every time that he has the ball in his hands, it's a little bit different than most guys. Like, not to say everybody, they don't have their traits, but he's just explosive in his hands. And I continue to make the Garrett Wilson comp, and it's not because he wears number 5. It's impossible not to look at him and say, that's Garrett Wilson in terms of the way he runs after the catch, his catch radius, same, kind of similar body build. So, and he had another great day today. He caught a couple of nice catches, nice balls, and then again, just making guys, not even making guys miss, just running past guys. And there's an element of first day of camp, they weren't in pads, there's not tackling. There's an element of how hard were those defenders? Would they have closed that gap if they were running full speed? They had to make a tackle. I don't know, but it just looks impressive. And I was talking to somebody today as we were sitting and watching this, and I'm going to say this, and I'm not saying it's true or that I firmly believe it, but I'm going to say I'm not going to tell you I don't believe it either. I'm not so sure that Marlon Graham's not the second best receiver on the team by the end of the year. So, and that's, and I think Carnell Tate's a really good receiver. I'm not going to sit here and say that I think that there's another. I'm not sure how much of a leap forward Carnell Tate has to take. I don't know how much more there is for us to see from Carnell Tate, which is still a very solid, place to be in. And he has a future in the league, but I think Marlon Graham's ceiling is higher than Carnell Tate's. And I'm not saying he won't get there at some point this year, depending on if he has the opportunities to do it.
So I'm going to tell you straight up, I 100% agree with that take. I've always thought that just skill wise, potential and talent, that Marlon Graham absolutely just jumps off the screen as just different. And Carnell, very good, very polished. Routes, hands, everything. Definitely, back end of the first round type talent to me. But Marlon Graham is, my son got irritated. He's a big Garrett Wilson fan, and he got irritated that he saw people were making that comp, and he came down and said, "You're not going to believe people are comparing him to Garrett." And I'm like, "Son, you got to watch him. You got to check him out. He's that kind of different. It's not just the number. He is that kind of different."
And Carnell Tate talking about how polished he is, that's great. There's obviously a place for that, and not just a place in Ohio State's offense. There's a place to be a 12-year NFL player with that skill set. So that's no knock on Carnell Tate. I just think that where Carnell Tate is going to be absolutely solid and steady, I don't think that he's the game breaker potentially that Marlon Graham has the chance to be. That I think will be as soon as he gets the opportunity to fully realize that potential. So, anyways,
and I love Brandon Innes, and Brandon's not that kind of athlete either.
Sure. And doesn't need to be. Those guys need to be exactly what they are in Ohio State. If Milan Graham never saw the field this year, Ohio State, obviously is as good at hands at receiver as anybody in the country. So those guys can be exactly what they are. But in terms of what Milan Graham can add, I just think he's a game breaker that outside of Jeremiah doesn't exist at that position. So,
yeah. Crazy. All right. Let's talk some college football in general. There are 9 teams that could potentially win the national championship this year. And we've never seen anything like this. Last year, going into the season, there were 4 teams up at the top with Ohio State, Texas, and Georgia and Oregon. And then you had Ole Miss a little farther back, and then there was a kind of a big drop to Bama and then a huge drop. Yeah. This year, there are 9 teams that kind of got it all, but kind of got a little question. The Buckeyes are obviously one of those teams. We go into a playoff, a 12-team playoff, and this is like, man, this is the year, if ever there was, to have this thing. It's going to be amazing. Who are your horses? Who are your top teams that you're thinking, these are my teams that I think are the toughest teams this year?
Well, I'll start with the obvious 3. I think pretty much everybody's, well, I don't want to say everybody's, but most people's, Texas, Ohio State, and Penn State are the 3 teams that I think Penn State has the most complete roster in college football, but then I'm not, as you know, I'm not super high on Drew Aller. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. We're going to find out this year. No longer does he have kind of like the bailout, excuse of like those receivers are so poor that who could, make plays in that offense with those receivers. He has some guys now, like it's now or never for that entire roster for James Franklin, all the way throughout that roster. So, but given that, I still think that he's a talented quarterback. I'm not saying that at all. Given that he's a talent, as talented as he is, and then how complete the roster is, like Penn State's certainly up there with Ohio State and then Texas as well. But Texas has lost a ton as well. So, I mean, again, there's a lot of teams that, outside of Penn State, I guess, which again, you say they have the most complete roster in football. Outside of that, there's a lot of teams that, are talented enough to win it, but they have questions as well. So, but I would put those 3 in there. I would throw Clemson as a close, 4th for Clemson and Georgia, I would say. But again, I don't know how much I believe in Stockton as, a guy who's going to go lead, Georgia to a national championship. So I'm curious to know what your 9 teams are, because I don't know if I would have said coming into this, and I had no idea you were going to say this. So I had no idea. I had no chance to think about it. I wouldn't know if I would have said 9 teams are capable of winning a national championship this year. So I'm curious to know what those 9 teams are in your opinion, because I would say,
good. Let me pull this up for you.
I would say maybe, I don't know if I could get past 7.
All right. We've pulled up the odds so everyone can see what I'm talking about. Because Dillon said, I'm full of blue mud. There's no way 9 teams can win the national championship. And I said, listen, not my opinion. It's the odds. Now, the odds tell us after LSU, it drops off a cliff. But if we look at the construction of all these teams, it wouldn't surprise me at the end of the year if any one of these teams was hoisting the trophy. And we can go through them. But you have got Texas, you've got Penn State, you've got Ohio State as your 3 that you think are the most complete right now.
Yep.
And I'm going to tell you, I actually think Clemson's a top 3 team to me.
Okay.
When I look at Clemson with the number 1 returning production, with a coach who's won 2 national championships, bringing in Tom Allen, the superstars they got on defense, the wide receiver core, and Cade Klubnik, who might be the most underrated of all these quarterbacks out there. I think that's absolutely a squad that has the chance to run away with this thing. Really. I mean, they could be a juggernaut this year. Penn State, I'm also with you where I really like Drew Aller, and I think that clouds my judgment. He's a kid from Medina. He's a Browns fan.
Yeah,
I really like the kid, but I feel like that arm, man, he can make all the throws. He just seems to sometimes in the moment feel like the pressure gets to him. And you go back to that game a couple of years ago at the Shoe where he was just dreadful. And it's like, man, then the playoff game last year, the way it ended against Notre Dame, in the big moment, he's not stepped up. Will he be able to? Will a couple of receivers make that much of a difference? I don't know, but I will say the way people are kind of throwing off that, all right, Michigan did it like this. Ohio State did it like this. Now Penn State is constructed like this. Therefore, they'll do it. Like, that's not how it works, man. It's just not how it works. You don't just get to, have the guys come back. Okay, that's it. We go get to win our national championship.
Yeah, no, I'm just looking at these odds. Sorry. And yeah, I didn't realize I thought you were saying you thought there were 9 teams capable and you weren't going off the odds. But looking at these odds, the 6 teams that I think are, that I would not be surprised at all if any one of the 6 won a national championship are all the same in various orders. Where I probably out at on that list is from Oregon on down. Not that I don't think that Oregon's going to be a very good football team, but I guess if you're asking me would I put money on Oregon at, plus 1,100, I don't think I would. So, I think it's those top 6 teams on that list for me are probably where I draw the line of if you were going to give me, those 6 or the field, I would take those 6 for sure.
Why are you so out on Oregon?
Because I don't believe in Dante Moore.
Him specifically.
Yeah. I mean, they also lost a ton. I mean, we don't have to go over everything they lost off of a very good football team last year, but they have so much to replace at the skill positions as well. And there's a lot of assumptions that guys are just going to step in and replace those guys as, first year starters or heavy contributors. So I think that they regress offensively for sure.
I'm a big believer in Will Stein, and that's why I've just got a feeling that he's going to make Dante, who's, again, took a whole year last year just sitting and chilling, watching and practicing. I'm not a huge believer in him either, but if it happened, it wouldn't surprise me because those guys are so annoying. And again, their talent, they're at the point now where they're similar to Ohio State and Georgia. They need to bring in 10 guys out of the transfer portal. They're not out there loading up with 25 guys, and the guys that they brought in the portal, Dylan Thieneman and Mekhi Hughes, we're talking tops of the tops on top of their 2 tackles. Well, Isaiah World and Emmanuel Pregnon on the offensive line. They just seem to be at a level now where I think that they're just an annual national championship competitor. And if they do this year, we'll put it this way. If they actually are in the mix this year for the national championship, they're officially there. They are annual national championship competitor material. Notre Dame, you're not a believer. They got a lot coming back. They're bringing up CJ Carr, who's going to be their starter now, former 5-star out of Michigan, Lloyd Carr's son. Grandson.
Grandson, yeah.
But obviously a physical running team. I'm not really high on Notre Dame either. I don't really have a reason not to be high on them. I just don't know. I felt a lot of it last year was a little bit of smoke and mirrors.
Yeah. I mean, to sit here and say I'm not high on any of these teams that are on that list, again, I think those are all, teams that you'll see in the playoffs. And if you get into it, as we saw, anything can happen and you get hot and they all have, things that they're going to be able to rely on when they get into those situations as well. So say I'm not high on them. It's not that I'm not high on them. I feel like, past the Clemson mark, I have more questions about those teams and then the 6 above them. So, but Notre Dame, I agree with you kind of about the smoke and mirrors thing. Do I feel like last year was kind of a charmed run, all the way to the national championship? Yep. And to their credit, they did that. So, do I expect the same thing, this year? No. Admittedly, I don't have Notre Dame's schedule right in front of me as well, so I don't even know what their path to a playoff spot is. But I'm guessing that it's probably a pretty safe bet that they'll be in the playoffs. So once again, you get in there and you have a chance to make a run there as well. But if you think about Notre Dame on paper today against any of those top 5 or 6 teams, those top 5 or 6 teams would probably, and again, it doesn't matter. We're talking about on paper in the preseason on day 1 of camp for Ohio State. But, I would probably, set those lines. I would, any one of those top 5 or 6 teams would be a touchdown favorite over Notre Dame. If they were playing week 1, on a neutral field, I would say any one of those top 5 teams would be a touchdown favorite over Notre Dame. So
biggest question for me is Gunnar Stockton, and I lean like you that I just don't know if this guy's got what it takes to take advantage of the upgraded wide receiver room. They did upgrade the wide receiver room. That's for sure. Yeah. But if he ends up being that kind of dude, everybody else has got a problem.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean,
receivers now.
It's the same thing in Alabama. Between those 2 quarterbacks, if either one of those guys are dudes, for those 2 teams, yeah, it's going to be a problem for all of college football because we know what they have throughout their roster in terms of talent, how much they stack it, year in and year out through every recruiting cycle. So it comes down to quarterback play, which it always does. That's the game of football. In so many ways, it comes down to quarterback play, and it's the same thing holds true at Ohio State. It holds true at Penn State, for their national title hopes this year. And even, at Texas, again, everybody assuming Arch is that guy and that he's just going to, have evolved into the guy that everybody thought he was when he was being recruited. And if he does, then Texas is going to be very hard to beat, this year.
What is your assumption on Arch? Where are you at? I'm a big Arch guy.
I don't have a strong opinion on him one way or another. I tend to be inclined to think that he will be, closer to what everybody thought he was than not, just because I know that, for one, he seems like a very well-rounded kid, and you would expect as much coming from that family in terms of wanting to put the work in, and the foundation that he has around him to play that position, something that he's been, being groomed to play his entire life. I have no reason to believe that in a Sark offense, that's all of a sudden just not going to come to fruition. So whether he's, potential number one draft pick, at the top of the board next year, that good, I don't know. And that's obviously things like that are also not always indicative of how you played either. Those are traits and, projections. And when it comes to the NFL draft as well. So that's not necessarily an indication of how good he was this year. So, but I think that he's probably closer to that than not. And if he is, Texas is going to be hard to beat. So, we're going to get a taste of that very early on.
All right. What do you think of that game? What are you leaning towards? What's your inclination? Dillon, stop it.
What?
Go ahead.
I mean, in anticipation of, college football season and not being able to wait for it, when lines were released, I may or not have already put some money on Texas to win that game at the spread that it opened up at. So
I can see it in your face.
If I had to bet, look, just because I think that I forget how many points I even got with Texas, first of all. So I'm not even saying they're going to win the game based on those bets. I was getting points, and it was too many for me to think that I got to pass that up. That's number one. Two, even if I think that Texas wins the football game, I'm not in any way saying that Ohio State's season doomed, and I'm not a believer and that they can't go win a national championship. If I had to guess, I would take Arch to just slightly outplay whoever starts for Ohio State, in my opinion, Julian saying, and make just enough plays and to win a 24-20 game. And it's a classic football game, and both teams are going to come away saying, wow, yep, these are two of the best teams in the college football, and there's no reason why they shouldn't be back in the playoff as favorites to go win a national championship. That's not saying anything bad. So anybody who out there who wants to rake me over the coals because I dare think that Texas, might win the football game, on August 30th, sorry. Would I be shocked if Ohio State won the game at all? No. And I'm not saying I won't change my opinions, come August 21st or when I see who's named quarterback and I get a chance to see how he performs in some of these, true good on good situations at Ohio State or in practices. So I reserve the right to change my mind. But as of right now, I'm just saying, if you told me gun to my head, you got to bet on it, I'll take Texas.
All right. Just want to remind everybody that Dillon took Ohio State to lose to Penn State last year when they rolled in there. Just a reminder. I guess I'm just frustrated, Dillon. I'm frustrated because Ohio State is the favorite in this game. And I don't think I've heard anybody outside of a couple of Ohio State honks like me say the Buckeyes are going to win the game. Everybody's got Texas. I mean, everybody. I don't understand it. There's a disconnect going on somewhere.
Well, I mean, there's really I think there's a disconnect on just going back to the Arch thing, but in general, the assumptions with Texas in general compared to, the way people talk about Ohio State and the quote unquote question marks that they might have replacing all their talent. Texas lost a lot from that team last year. UES, they have.
They set their record. They set their record for draft picks.
Right. Yes, Arches, the heir apparent, CJ Baxter. Is it CJ Baxter? Yeah. Is going to be back and healthy again. They have a lot of talent at receiver. There are plenty of pieces to say, yeah, here's why Texas is going to go win the national championship, and not many people would argue with it. I get that. But they have a lot, of questions to answer themselves as well. And it's just, there's a lot of assumption going on with Texas. Whereas, people look at Ohio State and it's question marks of how are they going to replace all this talent. So, when I say I would pick Texas again, in no way, shape, or form am I saying that I would be surprised if Ohio State won the game in any way, shape, or form. I'm just not saying that. I'm just saying gun to my head. I'll pick the guy who's at least had some game experience at quarterback and can also impact games. If that game gets muddied up and it's ugly and offenses are struggling to move the ball, Texas has another way they can, find yards with Arch's legs that Ohio State doesn't have. And we saw last year, there's a reason why they went out, and we've talked about this. There's a reason why they went out and got Will Howard specifically, and why Chip Kelly wanted Will Howard, and why Ryan Day wanted Chip Kelly in Columbus, because it opens up an aspect of the offense that's just invaluable in a lot of different ways. Texas is going to have that next year, especially early on. If it's kind of clunky on offense, they will have other ways to move the football than what Ohio State will have. That matters in a game of that, like that, where talent's equated. So.
It got me laughing today, Dill. Somebody brought up or asked Ryan Day about Will's leadership or his intangibles or the special thing that he brought. And the first thing he said was, Will was big. Will's really big. Like he's so enamored by Will's size, man. He brings it up over and over and over.
I just can't imagine like the safety blanket that is to just know, for all the reasons, a quarterback of that size and that build, that he's going to be able to get up time and time again. Like, he's going to be able to withstand the physicality of playing the position, that you have that in your back pocket, some of the, different play calls you can make with that, that he can make plays if everything else breaks down, extend plays, all those things. Like, it's just an invaluable thing to have as an element of your offense that, isn't always common. So, it's not like, okay, why don't you just go get it? Well, those aren't, those kind of guys aren't just sitting out there for everybody waiting for somebody to, to sign them and say, okay, well, let's go, be a dynamic offense and win a national championship. Texas has it this year. And, if they're going to make a run to a national championship, I promise you, there will be a lot of times where Arch's legs were a big reason why they were able to withstand, a game or, even a stretch where, maybe the offense wasn't clicking. So.
All right. Well, before we get out of here, I just want to end it on a positive note. Boom. Bam. Look at that. Look at that forearm.
Pipes, baby. Pipes.
That's a beef.
Julian looks good. Physically, he looks good. I know there's been a lot of talk about his size or lack thereof, that he's only 6 feet, that whatever. I don't really care if he is 6 feet, like with cleats on. However, big, the studs are in the cleats, which can vary in size depending on if you're Tennessee from the Citrus Bowl, then they might be a little bit longer than a lot of people aren't even going to get that reference. But in terms of having cleats on the field, he looks like he's plenty big enough to me. And then he's obviously gotten stronger in the offseason as well to physically withstand playing the position. So, I have no doubts about Julian, the physical, component of it. It's just all a matter of how prepared they can get him, assuming he's going to start, prepared they can get him mentally to be able to do what he has to do there. So
yeah, absolutely. All right, brother, I'm going to let you go on that. Thanks so much for joining us. We will we'll do a wrap up, guys, and we'll talk after these first 3 practices are done. Dillon and I will chop it up about any other new things that come about, Edric's injury, etc. Appreciate you so much, brother.
Always enjoy it. We'll be at practice the next couple of days as well, so we'll still have plenty to talk about maybe sometime early next week. So
all right, bro. Have a good one.
Yep, you as well.